Hi, hello. My name is Jyoti Sapru, and I am a proud member of United Indians. We take upon us to help people in this moment of crisis, people who do not have the opportunity, people who do not have the awareness, and people who do not have the means to reach out for professional help, especially in the pandemic and otherwise. And this is such a fantastic platform where we can connect, and the subscribers can avail the facilities of listening to our videos on particular topics pertinent to certain relevant mental health issues. Today, the topic that I'm going to talk about is the identity development and identity crisis, especially amongst teenagers. Let us first try to understand the major theories that go around, and the person who has basically come up or coined the term identity crisis was Ericsson. Theorist Ericsson coined the term identity crisis and believed that it was one of the most important conflicts people face in development. According to Ericsson, an identity crisis is a time of intensive analysis and exploration of different ways of looking at oneself. That's how we perceive ourselves, the perception of self. So, Ericsson's own interest in identity began in childhood. Raised Jewish, and Ericsson appeared very Scandinavian and often felt that he was an outsider of both groups. His later studies of cultural life among the Yurok of Northern California and Sioux of South Dakota helped formalize Ericsson's ideas about identity development as well as identity crisis. Now, Ericsson described identity as a subjective sense as well as an observable quality of personal sameness and continuity paired to some belief in the sameness and continuity is, it is kind of what we share about the world image and how it is connected to our own existence. As a quality of unself conscious living, this can be gloriously obvious in a young person who has found himself as he has found his communality or his surroundings, his environment. Now, to briefly understand the stages in Ericsson's theory, basically, since we are talking about identity development, it is also very important to understand the various stages. So, the Ericsson stages of psychosocial development and the emergence of an identity crisis occurs during the teenage years, in which the people struggle with feelings of identity versus role confusion. In today's rapidly changing world, identity crises are more common than in Ericsson's days. And I hope that you all will agree. If you are a teenager, or if you're a parent of a teenager, or you're dealing with teenagers in a professional way, you must understand that with changing times, the identity crisis has really become more deeper. Again, there is the Marcia theory about the identity, or called the identity status theory. This was by researcher James Marcia, 1966, 1976, and 1980. He has basically expanded upon the Erickson's initial theory. According to Marcia and his colleagues, the balance between identity and confusion lies in making a commitment to the identity. Also, Marcia developed an interview method to measure identity as well as 4 different identity statuses. This method looks at 3 different areas of functioning. Number 1 is the occupational role. Number 2 is the beliefs. Number 3, values. And number 4 is the sexuality. So now, coming to the stages in this theory, let us try to understand that the first stage is foreclosure. Foreclosure status is when the person has made a commitment without attempting identity exploration. Number 2 is identity achievement. This occurs when an individual has gone through an exploration of different identities and made a commitment to any one of them. Then there is the identity diffusion. This occurs when there is neither an identity crisis or commitment. Those with a status of identity diffusion tend to feel out of place in the world and don't pursue a sense of identity at all. Then there is the moratorium stage. In this stage, the status of a person who is actively involved in exploring different identities has not made any commitment. So these are the different stages that one goes through according to Marcia's theory. Now, coming back to the Erickson's theory, which is the basic theory for identity crisis, and we all as psychologists and counselors and helpers, mental health workers, we follow this. So, according to Ericsson, the stage of psychosocial development and the emergence of an identity crisis occurs during the teenage years, in which the people struggle with the feeling of identity versus role confusion. As we are, growing, we play different roles as a daughter, as a sister, later on you become wife, mother. So there is always an ongoing struggle between our actual identity versus the roles that we play. In today's rapidly changing world, identity crises are more common today than in previous days, and the conflicts are not only confined to teenage years, many adults, and as we know, there is also midlife crisis later on in life. So it's a phase which one goes through. So we must try to understand that why do people have so much confusion about the roles that they play and about the identity that they have to maintain, one for themselves and one for the rest of the world. So why and when does this happen? Because people tend to experience them at various points throughout life, particularly at points of great change, including beginning of a new relationship. Whenever we are in a new relationship, there is tremendous identity crisis. We tend to be our best and we try to seek the best and we see the best, and everything is, very different. And another example would be, like ending of a relationship, ending of a marriage, ending of a partnership, which again leads to a tremendous, guilt or self-pity, or there is a change, there is a shift in our identity. So again, Suppose somebody is experiencing a traumatic event. If some teenager has lost a parent or broken up with their boyfriend or girlfriend, or there is some kind of trauma, any traumatic event also would lead to tremendous identity crisis. Then suppose you're an adult and you're having a child, so that would also, you lose your body, you lose your sleep, you lose your work. So there's so much changes, and again there is an identity crisis. Learning about health conditions, especially now in the times of COVID-19, there are many cases where people either suffering from COVID or their family members go through tremendous, identity crisis, and they tend to develop a lot of confusions as to how to deal with these situations where there is a probable health condition. Again, losing a loved one obviously would lead to a crisis. Starting a new job, losing a job, moving homes where you're attached to your chairs and tables and belongings, and you have to leave that and shift to a new house, that would also lead to a crisis. Identity crises are also common amongst people with mental illness, including depression, codependence, bipolar disorder, and borderline personality disorders. So we must understand that all these factors, all these experiences, all these phases would definitely aid in the development of the identity, and if not handled properly would lead to a crisis. Now, how can you tell if you're having an identity crisis? So what are the symptoms? What is it that you can help you understand that there is a crisis? While we all question who we are from time to time, you may be having an identity crisis if you're going through a big change or stressful time in life, and following questions begin to interfere with your daily life. There is that inner voice in you which talks to you, it rings in your head all the time. So that there are some questions that, if you these questions are, cropping up in your mind and interfering with your daily life, then definitely it is a pertinent symptom that you are heading for a crisis. What am I passionate about? So this is something that you keep asking yourself. What is it that drives you? What is your calling in life? What is you would like to do most passionately? And then suppose you keep asking yourself about your spiritual beliefs. What are my spiritual beliefs? What are my values? What is my role in the society? What is my purpose in life? Who am I? The question may be in general or in regards to your relationships, age, career, family, anything. So symptoms of identity crisis, like you are basically experiencing great personal conflict due to the questioning of who you are and your role in the society. Big changes have recently occurred and have affected your sense of self. So all these questions, when they are, in our thinking process, in our mental makeup, it is a definite cause, or you can say it is the reason that you can understand that you are going through an identity crisis. Again, like having an identity crisis is not a diagnosable condition. So there aren't typical symptoms as with a cold or a flu. Instead, there is the sign that you may be experiencing an identity crisis. So what are these signs? What are these signals? You're experiencing, sometimes you question yourself. who you are overall, or with regards to certain life aspects such as relationships, age, or career. You're experiencing great personal conflict due to questioning of who you are and your role in the society. Big changes have recently occurred that have affected your sense of self, such as divorce, or you're questioning things such as values, spirituality, beliefs, interests, career paths that have a major impact on how you see yourself. You are searching for more meaning, reason, or passion in your life. It's completely normal to question who you are, excuse me, especially since we change throughout our lives. However, when it is, beginning to affect our daily thinking and it is affecting our functioning, then you have to understand that this is a crisis situation and you may be developing a crisis of identity. So, coming to teenagers, since we are most prone to developing a crisis in our teens, let us understand what are the reasons, what are the causes for us to have this kind of identity crisis in our adolescent. So, rebelling and being risky. Rebellion indicates separation. Teens can show that they differentiate themselves from parents and authority. Authority figures like any teacher or any principal or any aunt or anybody. So they kind of show that they differentiate themselves from parents, from authority figures, while maintaining the acceptance of their peers. They loudly demonstrate this by rebelling from authority figures or engaging into risky behaviors. Again, another reason for them to develop an identity crisis would be forming cliches. Teens often can be ruthless in their exclusion of their peers. Since they are constantly trying to define and redefine themselves in relationship to others, they do not want to be associated with anyone having unacceptable and unattractive characteristics. They work to strengthen their own identities by excluding those who are not like themselves. So, these are, very pertinent causes for teens to develop into a situation of identity crisis. Again, their causes, their reasons may be a little different from those of adults, but I think it is your growth, it is your development which will keep on bringing you back to a crisis. Suppose as a teenager I have an identity crisis and I'm so prone to that kind of thinking, then as an adult or as a middle-aged person, again I will be prone to fall into a midlife crisis. So we must understand that there are some stressors, there are some triggers. So once we can identify them, then the chances of not developing a crisis of identity are much greater. So, there often, though, as happenings of certain ages, an identity crisis can happen to anyone of any age at any point of your life. So, oftentimes, the identity crisis or other mental health issues can arise due to major life stressors. These stressors don't have to be inherently bad, but they can cause a lot of stress, which makes you question who you are and what do you actually value. Stressors can include a situation where you're about to get married or you're about to start a relationship. Similarly, it can happen if you're about to end a relationship, or you're getting separated, or you're getting divorced. Again, moving from one city to another, moving from one home to another, moving from home to college, moving into a hostel premises, all this might also cause a development of crisis. Experiencing like any kind of a traumatic event from your immediate surroundings would often lead to an identity crisis. Losing a loved one, your grandparents, losing friend, or anything, losing your pet dog, any loved one going away like that would definitely lead to a identity crisis. And then again, like I had said previously, if you are lost a job or your means of earning, or you're having some money or financial crisis, that too develops an identity crisis. And again, most importantly, health issues, like now we see in the times of COVID, people are going through tremendous identity crisis, and especially the teenagers who have been put in their homes in the lockdown. I am dealing with cases daily with teenagers taking to drug abuse, alcohol abuse, tobacco abuse. They are sitting home and basically they are not able to adapt to the situation. Those who are able to adjust are sailing through smoothly, but some who have this inbuilt fear of the situation, of the virus leaching onto them, or they getting some health issues, are definitely suffering from identity crisis. And we should come together and try to understand this situation and handle it in a better way. Now, the teenage years are full of growing pains. This is the transitional period in our lives where we are determining who we are, who we want to be, where we fit in, and where we don't. Finding our own identity is easier said than done. It can be emotional and exhausting journey. It can be difficult to recognize also. If your child is facing obstacles on their quest to identity, here are some ways that you can indicate struggles in this area. Obsessing with status symbols. Now, adolescents try to establish themselves through prestige, wearing what's in style, having the latest devices, and whatever other criteria is required to be in the crowd. They want to be a part of it. And these symbols help form teen identities by expressing affiliation with specific groups. Teens can become obsessed with the idea and tirelessly commit to fulfilling the role. While they may not actually enjoy the clothes they are wearing or the company that they keep, it is the way for them to feel accepted. So, acting out to fit in, the teens often feel obligated to assert their independence because that comes with the growing up and being cool. That is the word they use, that to be cool. They may feel that appearing mature will bring attention and acceptance. They begin engaging in practices they associate with adulthood, and tabooed pleasures such as smoking, drinking, drugs, and sexual activities. So now we have understood how a teenage who is just coming at the footfall of the childhood as well as going to be the adult, and how they struggle to find an identity, to make an identity, to fit into the society, and their own glorious fantasies with their peers, with the in crowd, and to be cool kind of pushes them to a situation where they are having identity crisis. So now let us understand what is the treatment for an identity crisis. Questioning your sense of self may be stressful, but it can actually be a good thing in the long term. Knowing who you are better and adapting to changes can help you grow as a person. Here are some tips that you can do to get through an identity crisis. Look inward and explore yourself. Take some time out to really look within yourself. Ask yourself some questions about what you like and you don't like anymore. Ask yourself and see if you can answer them over time, and if the answers help you figure things out. Remember, you don't have to have all the answers, and they may change from year to year, or decade to decade. Your answers may change. It's okay if you have, if you are fickle minded, it's okay, but at least you can make an attempt, you can make a start. The basic exploration will definitely help you reason with your own self. So when we see, we ask ourselves questions like, what qualities and characteristics define you? How has this changed over the years? If you're experiencing a major life crisis, how have things changed for you? Are you content with these changes? How can you cope with these new things coming? What are your values? Is anything working in opposition to them? What are your interests? What are your passions? What are your hobbies? Are you doing what you like to do? And if not, why not? If you love to play tennis and haven't for several years, what factors are preventing it? Again, you can also ask yourself, what are your interests, passions, hobbies, and try to answer them and try to reach a logical conclusion. What grounds you? What helps you cope when you're struggling? What's important to you regarding your values, your purpose in life, or sense of identity? Is there anything that you feel you can do to improve your own sense of self? So this is how we can, keep questioning ourselves and getting our answers. And I'll also very strongly feel that we always tend to look up to our peers, up to our parents, up to our scholars, our academicians to help us. But are we doing anything to help ourselves? So try and help yourself if you are dealing with an identity crisis, because you are in that situation and only you understand what's going on inside your head. So there's a good reason to overcome an identity crisis. Researchers have found that those who have made a strong commitment to identity tend to be happier, they tend to be healthier than those who have not. Exploring different aspects of yourself in the different areas of life, including your role at work, within the family, and in romantic relationships, can help strengthen your personal identity. Consider looking within to figure out the qualities and characteristics that define you and make you feel grounded and happy, and as well as your values, your interests, your passions, and your hobbies. Once you go into introspection of yourself and you tend to understand yourself better, understand your mind better, ask yourself questions, and whatever makes you happy, just kind of contribute to your positive thinking, which will help you come out of the crisis development slowly and slowly. Again, I'll give you some tips as to how you can search for joy and other ways to cope with a identity crisis. What makes you happy? What gives your life a sense of purpose and joy? We all have a very big sixth sense. We all have an intuition. We all say, follow your heart. You just need to kind of put it to work. So when you ask yourself, what makes you happy? What gives your life a sense of purpose and joy? You don't necessarily have to have a perfect job. There is no perfect person, there's no perfect job, there's no perfect family. But if you are doing anything fulfilling in your life, then this might be why you feel like you are in a crisis. Again, you may find fulfillment in volunteering, taking up a new hobby, connecting with others, or any number of other things outside of your employment or studies. You may find that a new job, any part-time job, will be more appropriate match for who you are. Find support. Having good social support can help influence how well you cope with these changes, stressors, and questions of identity. There are many places you can find support. Where do you look for support? You look for support in friends, in partners, and family members of your community, a new group, a new club, or a meetup that shares your interest, a support group, especially when dealing with a health issue. Mental health group or individual therapy, team sports or activities. These are the groups and support groups where you can actually look for some resolution and solace from your crisis situation. Ignore internal and external judgments. Other people's expectation as well as our own can have a big effect on how we are feeling. But don't let the society standards dictate who you are and what you should like. Just because you are of a certain age or of a certain gender, of a certain cultural group, doesn't mean that you need to follow along if you no longer believe in what you are following. Your self perception is important to your overall well being, and spending your energy on judgmental thinking can get you nowhere. If it may take time for people you love to understand any changes you make, you'll be happier in the long term if you are true to yourself. Finding yourself, looking within, and following your heart is what is going to give you true happiness. Make your life purposeful. Now, when we try to seek outside help, if the stress gets to be too much, consider seeking outside help. This can come from a trustworthy friend or family member to talk to, or a mental health professional. And also, you can resolve and cope with what's going on in a positive way. Never feel afraid to ask for help. Life, especially big changes, can feel scary, but we all go through it and we are in this together. So, what is the major takeaway that we can from this topic that we are dealing today is the development of identity and identity crisis is that the sense of self and identity is important to everyone. Although having an identity crisis can make you feel lost or frustrated, these types of crises can also be fundamentally helpful. Questioning your sense of self, your purpose, and your values can help you gain a better self of who you are and who you will be. Remember, change is a part of life, and looking back, you will see that you have been changing all along. So, like they say, that the change is the only constant. Let not the change scare you, but let you change for the better. If you're experiencing a lot of major life stressors and you feel like you are in a serious mental health crisis, please do contact a professional who can help you work through what you are going through. Nothing is more important than your health. Mental health matters. Please do reach out. We are all here to help you. Also, coming to the conclusion, we would like to pin down certain do's and don'ts. So, basically for teenagers, I would like to say start having your, I mean, you know, basically teenagers are not in a condition to help themselves. So, this advice and tip is basically for the parents how they can help their teens. So start having your teen look inward to discover what they like and what they don't like. If you want certain clothes, for example, ask them why. And is it because they saw other students wearing them, or they felt they had to conform, or do they really like the clothes? Another example would be asking them what kind of career they see themselves in a certain point in their life or in future, rather than guiding them towards a path of your choice. So ask questions instead of making demands. A question as simple as what makes you happy, or do you want to go to college, rather than demands. You'll be happy if you do X, you have to go to college because of Y, can help them decide what they want out of their life. Don't pass judgment if you don't agree. In some cases, an identity crisis can be worsened by a parent who doesn't agree with what the teen decides to want. A scenario of your son asking to be enrolled in a ballet class only to be met with pressure to joining the football team can cause massive conflict in the son's mind. Similarly, your daughter wanting to join the army only to be told that girls shouldn't enlist is equally troubling. Hopefully, these simple ideas can help you help your teen through their identity crisis. As the teenager, in their teen years, bring upon many hardships, and being supportive of your teen is very crucial for you as a parent. While you cannot tell them who they are, and you shouldn't, you can help guide and support them, and it's a process of self discovery which we have to take them through. And here are some guiding steps you can put in action with your teen. Pull out the paper. Have your teen create a list of personal characteristics that are most important to them and the aspects which are least important, and the aspects of intermediate importance. So, he is able to categorize his priorities. Use this list to talk about values and the threat that peer pressure poses to unpopular beliefs. Also, don't be afraid to revisit the list when your teen seems to veer from the by path they have set for themselves in a negative way. Create a collage, one entitled Who I Am and the other Who I Would Like to Be. After the collages are completed, discuss why the specific images are chosen in each collage. This is a great opportunity for you to set goals and plans to achieve the person that your teen wants to be. Answer the Who am I? Very important. So have ask your teen to write down 20 responses to this question, Who am I? As quickly as possible without self-censoring. Discuss the answers as well as the process of choosing each answer. Does your teen like the answers? If not, what can they do to improve themselves? This is effective and healthy way to process. So, you can have a residential treatment center for young children struggling with emotional issues, mental disorders, and also a place where they can effectively communicate and build their confidence and all the skills that they need to lead a happy and healthy life. So it is up to us as parents, as adults, to help these teens develop a strong sense of identity. And there have been various case studies where youth problems have been demonstrated and actively participated by different members of the society, which assist the youth in dealing with self-identity crisis, the adolescent self-identity, and affect that the future development of their personality and attitude when dealing with them and others. The present study of children, of adults, have all been a learning and a social eye-opener. The road to self-discovery for the teenagers. These scientific studies have basically, educated all of us as a society to come together and deal with this major development of crisis of identity, which I think, if dealt properly by parents, by families, by us as a society, will lead to a very well balanced and emotionally mature generation. Thank you. I am going to sign off now. My name was Jyoti Sapru, and I'm a psychological counselor attached with United Indians. Thank you. Bye.